Why did the air suddenly feel different that afternoon? The sun was warm on the concrete steps outside the comms hangar, the kind of golden heat that made metal shimmer and uniforms stick to skin. Lieutenant Rhea Callan sat there quietly, elbows on her knees, a folded letter balanced in her hands like it was made of glass. Around her, cadets lounged with the restless arrogance of the untested, tossing footballs, laughing too loud, shouting over one another. It was a normal day at Myiramar Training Annex. Ordinary, safe, until it was. Rhea's eyes scanned the letter one more time. The handwriting curved and looped with uneven confidence. Her brother, Private Dylan Callan, 21, stationed somewhere he wasn't allowed to name. Doing good, sis. Keeping your old rules, slow as smooth. Smooth as fast, Miss Home, miss you. She smiled faintly. Not the kind that reached her eyes, just a quiet twitch at the corner of her mouth, the kind you'd miss if you weren't watching closely. There was something steady about her, something the younger cadets couldn't place. Too calm, too contained. They called her Ghost Lady behind her back. 28 years old, already a decorated SEAL, but her record didn't match her scars. Rumors said she'd served in a unit that didn't officially exist. Some said she'd died once. Others whispered about a mission no one came back from. She never corrected them, never denied it, just did her job, trained her cadets, and read her letters in silence. "Still writing yourself fan mail, Lieutenant?" One of the cadets called, half laughing. It was Phelps, quick-witted and cocky, the kind who mistook humor for courage. The others snickered, waiting for her to fire back. Rhea folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her front pocket. "You'll figure out someday, cadet," she said softly, eyes never leaving the horizon, "that not everything worth fighting for wears a uniform." The words hung there, quiet and weighty, and for a moment even the air seemed to listen. Some cadets shifted awkwardly. Others smirked, pretending not to care. But before anyone could speak again, a sharp burst of static cracked through the loudspeaker tower above them. It wasn't the usual polished voice from base command. This was older, rougher, like a ghost clawing its way out of the past. "Wraith 4, extraction point confirmed transmission." The football hit the dirt with a hollow thud. Every cadet froze. The only sound was the hiss of feedback bleeding through the speaker. Rhea's head tilted slightly. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes did, a flicker of recognition, sharp and fleeting. The comms operator stumbled out of the hangar, headset askew, pale as chalk. "That frequency," he stammered. "It's not even on our grid. It's been inactive since before I enlisted." No one spoke. The tension thickened until even the hum of the air conditioner seemed too loud. Then Rhea stood. Slow, deliberate, like she was remembering how to move after a long sleep. The cadets stepped back instinctively. Something unseen had shifted around her. She walked straight to the comms tower. "Lieutenant," the operator called, "you can't." She didn't answer. At the base of the tower, her thumb pressed against an old manual override scanner, a relic most people had forgotten even existed. The light blinked red, then green. Static cleared. And then came the voice again, clear this time. "Wraith 4, copy." Rhea lifted the mic to her lips. "Copy," she said, her tone steady, colder than the steel under her boots. "This is Wraith 4, authentication requested." Behind her, a murmur rippled through the cadets. "Wraith," Phelps whispered, "I thought that was just a myth." Harper, the quiet one, shook his head. "No, that's Black Ops protocol, level 7 clearance. They shut that down after the Kabul blackout." Inside the hangar, the operator whispered into his headset, his voice trembling. "Sir, she just accessed a restricted frequency, classified level 7. The mic hissed again, then a man's voice answered. "Authentication confirmed. Extraction protocol active. Stand by for vector upload." Something passed across Rhea's face then, small, unguarded, almost human. A memory maybe, pain definitely, but she straightened, chin lifted. "Copy that," she said. The mic went dead. No one breathed. No one dared to move. The only sound was wind rustling through the flags overhead. Then Phelps spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Ma'am, what's extraction point?" Rhea turned slowly. Her face was calm, unreadable, but her voice carried a strange softness. "It's what they call you when they don't expect you to come back." The cadets exchanged nervous looks. The operator swallowed hard. "Ma'am, command wants to know what you just accessed." She didn't answer. Instead, her gaze lifted to the sky. Far above, something rumbled, a distant aircraft cutting through the clouds. Then she looked back at them, her tone firm again. "Get back to your drills. You didn't hear that." They hesitated. "That's an order." And just like that, she walked away. No explanations, no emotion, just the measured steps of someone who'd already accepted what came next. But for the first time, they didn't see her as the quiet instructor who corrected their comms logs or lectured about signal discipline. They saw something else, something older, a shadow of a legend standing in daylight. Inside her pocket, the letter pressed warm against her heart. She touched it briefly, thumb tracing the folded edges. "Doing good, sis." She exhaled slowly. "You better be," she murmured. That night, whispers spread like wildfire across Myiramar. Some said the broadcast was a glitch. Others swore they'd seen her mouth move long after the mic had gone dead. One cadet claimed she whispered, "Extraction confirmed," but no one had proof, and no one was brave enough to ask her. When the sun set, Rhea was still outside the hangar, staring west toward the ocean. The sky burned in streaks of orange and violet, and the wind tugged at her collar. The cadets who passed her didn't speak. They just nodded quietly, sensing that something about her had changed. And in truth it had. Later that night, while the rest of the base slept, Rhea sat alone in the old radar control shed, its lights dim and flickering. On the monitor before her, encrypted text scrolled in green. "Wraith unit reactivation, level Alpha, authorization granted." Her pulse didn't quicken. It slowed, like her body was remembering something it had once promised to forget. The years she'd buried under layers of silence, the blackout in Helmand, the team they said died there, the ghosts who still called her by a code name no one else remembered. Outside, the wind pressed against the steel door, making it rattle in uneven bursts. Every creak sounded like a voice from the past. She closed her eyes. For a moment, she could almost hear them, her team, laughing in the dark before a mission that never made it to the books. She opened her eyes again. Duty, not nostalgia, filled the space. She started typing. "Command access override. Signal relay, manual trace. Authorization, Wraith 4. Somewhere deep in the network, the static pulse responded. The channel was alive. At breakfast the next morning, the cadets spoke in hushed tones. "She didn't report to the officers' mess," Harper said. "Maybe she's suspended," someone whispered. Phelps shook his head. "No, she's being recalled. I saw her face yesterday. That wasn't training." Before anyone could argue, the PA system crackled. "Lieutenant Rhea Callan, report to operations immediately." Every conversation stopped. Heads turned. Trays froze midair. Then they saw her walking across the courtyard in full uniform, duffel slung across her shoulder, eyes forward. Each step was steady, unhurried, but it felt heavy, like gravity itself had changed for her. Even the arrogant cadets stood, without knowing why. In operations, Commander Langston waited, arms crossed. The glow from 3 monitors painted her face in pale blue light. "You accessed a dormant comms channel yesterday," she said without preamble. "You want to tell me why?" Rhea didn't blink, "Because it called me first." Langston frowned. "That frequency hasn't been active in 5 years. Then something woke it up." Rhea's tone was calm, but her gaze was sharp. "Someone out there knows our old signal pattern. You don't fake a call like that." Silence hung thick between them. Langston finally sighed, rubbing her temples. "You know what happened the last time they used that code? Half the team vanished. The rest. I know, Rhea cut in quietly. I was there. Outside the glass, a few cadets pretended to mop floors just to steal glances through the window. They watched as Langston's posture changed, from confrontation to concern. This wasn't a reprimand. It was a recall. Minutes later, Rhea stepped out of the office carrying a sealed manila folder. She paused when she noticed Phelps standing nearby, trying not to stare. "Cadet Phelps," she said. He snapped to attention, heart pounding. "Ma'am. You ever wonder why I make you run radio silence drills every Friday?" He blinked. "Because you said calm discipline saves lives." "No," she said softly, almost smiling. "Because someday it might be the only thing standing between you and vanishing." She adjusted her duffel strap. "You're in charge until I'm back." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. By the time he thought of something, she was already gone. The Jeep waiting by the gate started its engine as she climbed in. The driver didn't speak. He didn't need to. They both knew where this road led. The tires rolled across the tarmac, toward the restricted hangar at the far end of the base. Inside, under a tarp, waited a matte black Osprey. No markings, no insignia, engines already humming. The kind of aircraft that didn't exist on paper. Rhea paused at the ramp, staring at it for a moment like greeting an old friend. "Didn't think I'd see this bird again," she murmured. A figure stepped out of the cockpit, helmet under one arm, voice gravelly with memory. "You weren't supposed to," he said. "But command sent the call, said only you would answer." She nodded once, climbing aboard. The hatch sealed behind her with a hiss. The engines roared, slicing the morning silence. Back at the academy, the cadets stood outside, watching as the dark shape lifted off, rising east against the rising sun. None of them spoke. Even the youngest felt it, the weight of something sacred leaving the ground. "Think she's coming back?" Harper asked quietly. Phelps didn't look away from the sky. "If she is," he said, "then the world's in more trouble than we thought." Far above the clouds, Rhea opened the manila folder. Inside were 3 photographs, a classified mission brief, and one line in red ink. "One survivor. Location unknown. Wraith operative designation 6. Her eyes narrowed. "6 is alive," she whispered. The pilot glanced over, thought they were all dead. "So did I," she said, pulling the folded letter from her pocket, running her thumb over her brother's handwriting. "Guess we were wrong about a lot of things." Outside, the horizon stretched endless and silent, waiting. "What do you do when the ghosts you buried start calling your name again?" The Osprey trembled against the morning wind, blades carving through pale mist as the Pacific stretched endlessly below. Lieutenant Rhea Callan sat near the cargo bay's edge, seatbelt loose, hands folded around the letter still tucked in her pocket. Her gaze was fixed, not on the horizon, not on the instruments, but on nothing. The kind of stare soldiers have when they're already halfway inside the memory they swore they'd never revisit. The pilot, Major Lennox, glanced at her through the rear mirror. "You haven't changed much," he said finally. Rhea's voice was quiet. "You have, you talk now." He chuckled softly, the sound thin against the drone of the engines. "You used to say talking got people killed." "It still does," she said, not looking at him. Silence followed. Only the rhythm of the rotors filled the void, steady, mechanical, familiar. It was the kind of silence she'd learned to live with, the kind that held more truth than words ever could. She unlatched her vest and pulled out a small, battered photograph. Her brother Dylan, smiling wide, a smudge of dirt on his cheek, uniform too big for him. He'd sent it the same week he wrote that letter. She meant to write back. She never did. Missions had a way of swallowing good intentions. Lennox noticed the photo but didn't comment. Some things were sacred. Some griefs were best left untouched. Hours passed in the hum of altitude until the console beeped, a blinking signal from the encrypted transponder. Lennox frowned. "We're getting a ping. Coordinates uplinked. Remote strip unregistered." Rhea didn't hesitate. Follow it. He adjusted the vector, engines shifting pitch as the Osprey banked eastward. You sure about this? He asked, eyes flicking to her reflection in the side window. Rhea didn't answer. She didn't have to. The coordinates weren't random. They were familiar, too familiar. A cold realization crept through her veins like static. That was the same grid line where the Wraith unit had gone dark years ago. Hellman's ghost. When they landed, it wasn't a base. It was a wound. A stretch of cracked tarmac carved out of dense jungle, the remnants of an abandoned relay site. Nature had started reclaiming the metal, vines crawling up radar towers, moss coating the barracks like green dust. Lennox killed the engines. The sudden quiet was deafening. Rhea stepped out first. The air was heavy with moisture, smelling of rust and rain. She scanned the perimeter, eyes narrowing. Then a voice broke through the silence. Never thought I'd see you here again, Wraith Four. She spun, hand on her sidearm before recognition hit. The man stepping out from behind the derelict fuel tank looked older, thinner, but his stance was unmistakable. Hail, Wraith 6. Rhea froze mid-step, her breath caught. For a second the world stopped spinning. You're supposed to be dead, she said. Hale gave a tired half-smile. Yeah, well, guess we both disappointed somebody. He looked like a ghost that hadn't decided whether to stay or leave. Eyes sharp but ringed with exhaustion, beard untrimmed, clothes a patchwork of old gear. Still, the way he carried himself, the stillness before movement, was pure soldier. What happened to the rest? She asked quietly. His jaw tightened. Gone, but not by chance. Someone been cleaning house. Surgical, silent extractions. I barely made it out. He reached into his vest and pulled out a data drive, small enough to hide under a fingernail. This has everything I salvaged before I went dark. Whoever's doing this, they've got our old clearance keys, and they shouldn't exist anymore. Rhea took the drive and stared at it for a long moment before sliding it into her pocket. Then they're not working against us, she murmured. They're working from inside. A gust of wind stirred the jungle canopy above them, carrying the faint buzz of insects and the echo of something metallic. Both turned instinctively, years of training collapsing time itself. Still paranoid, Hale muttered. Still alive, Rhea replied. They moved toward the derelict relay building, a rectangular structure with shattered glass and peeled paint. Rhea kicked the door open, weapon raised. Inside, dust blanketed the consoles except one. A single terminal hummed faintly, a green cursor blinking on the screen. Someone had been here recently. Hale crouched by the wall, fingers tracing a pattern through the grime. Fresh prints, 2 sets, one heavy, one light. Someone came back. Rhea stepped to the console. Her heartbeat slowed, the same calm that used to take over before an op. She leaned closer, squinting at the code flickering across the monitor. Wraith program, termination protocol active. Her blood ran cold. They're not just erasing the unit, she said quietly. They're erasing the record. Hale straightened. They already erased us, Rhea. You and I are just the leftovers. She began typing, commands flowing from memory, fingers steady. Access denied. Override again. Access denied. Then finally an opening. The screen changed, displaying an encryption signature she recognized instantly. Langston. Rhea's chest tightened. No, she wouldn't. Hale frowned. Commander Langston, the same Langston who pulled you out of Helmand. She's the one who gave me the recall order, Rhea said. If she's linked to this. Then we're already dead, Hale finished. She stared at the code, her reflection faint in the screen's glow. Maybe it wasn't betrayal. Maybe it was something worse, containment. Maybe Langston knew the world wasn't ready for what they'd become. Rhea exhaled slowly, forcing the doubt down. We end this tonight. Hale nodded once. No argument, no speech. Just understanding, the kind that only comes from people who have already buried too many names. They worked fast. Hale wired the power grid while Rhea uploaded the data drive. Lines of encrypted code streamed upward like green fireflies. She rerouted the transmission through the old Myiramar satellite band, the same one used for training drills. The irony wasn't lost on her. Miles away in California, Cadet Phelps sat in the comms booth long after curfew. The tower lights blinked lazily, the base silent except for the hum of generators. He replayed the static burst from the day before at least a dozen times. Something about it wouldn't let him sleep. He slowed the audio, filtering out background noise, scanning for rhythm. Then he heard it, a pattern buried deep beneath the static. 3 short bursts, pause, 3 long. He froze. He'd seen that cadence before, Rhea's signal training code. His stomach flipped. "Stay ready." Phelps ran across the barracks, bursting into Harper and Tor's room. "She's alive," he whispered, breathless. "She's sending this to us." Harper rubbed his eyes. "What are you talking about?" "Look." Phelps held up his tablet, playing the filtered recording. The pulse was faint but clear, rhythmic like a heartbeat. "That's her. She's alive, and she needs us to stay on comms." Tor's frowned. "You're saying she's out there on mission." "I'm saying she's telling us to be ready when the line opens again." And for the first time, they didn't laugh. They didn't question it, because deep down, every one of them had seen the way she looked at that mic, the way soldiers looked when ghosts called. By dawn, the 3 cadets had rigged a makeshift command link using spare transceivers and training software. They encrypted it under a fake maintenance log, connecting the entire training base's frequencies into a silent network. They didn't tell command. They didn't need to. Whatever was happening, they weren't going to just watch from the sidelines. Meanwhile, half a world away, the jungle pressed close around the old relay station. The night had turned thick, the air electric with tension. Rhea checked her watch, 0200 hours. "We'll need to transmit full data before they find us," she said. "They'll come fast once the system pings." Hale nodded. "You think Langston behind this?" Rhea hesitated. "If she is, then she's not acting alone." The console beeped again, connection established. Across the Pacific, the comms tower at Myiramar flickered to life. Cadets scrambled from bunks as the speakers crackled. Phelps froze mid-keystroke as a familiar voice came through. Calm, clipped, unmistakable. "Myiramar Control, this is Wraith 4. Authorization Tango 7. Do not interfere." The entire dorm fell silent. "To those under my command," Rhea's voice continued, "you train for noise, but war is made of silence. Maintain readiness and remember your oath to protect, not to obey blindly. Extraction point confirmed. Wraith out." And just like that, the signal cut. Back in the relay station, Hale turned toward her, eyes wide. "You just told the whole base to stand by. You realize what that means?" She nodded. "It means they'll be listening when the truth hits." He scanned the doorway. "They'll be here soon. You sure this is worth dying over?" Rhea gave a faint, tired smile. It always was. The first explosion hit less than a minute later, an echo that shook the walls, raining dust from the ceiling. Armed figures stormed through the smoke, faces masked, weapons suppressed. No insignia, no names. Government or mercenary, it didn't matter. They moved like professionals, too clean for amateurs. Hale dove for cover, returning fire as Rhea triggered the uplink, forcing a data dump into the cloud. "If we go down," she said through gritted teeth, "the truth doesn't." Hale laughed dryly as bullets shattered a panel beside him. Always the optimist. The firefight was short, brutal, inevitable. When the smoke cleared, the station burned, fire licking at the metal roof, jungle glowing orange in the distance. Rhea knelt beside the ruined console, hands trembling but steady enough to finish the upload. Her lips moved, but only one word came out: "Done." Miles away at Myiramar, the encrypted feed vanished midstream, replaced by a single locator icon pulsing faintly over the Pacific. Phelps leaned closer to the monitor. "She bought us time," he whispered. Langston entered the room moments later, pale, eyes heavy. "You didn't see this," she said quietly, "but you will remember it." She placed a small black notebook on the console, the same kind Rhea always carried, and walked away. Phelps opened it with shaking hands. Inside, one phrase written in Rhea's sharp, deliberate handwriting. "Silence isn't surrender, it's preparation." Outside, the ocean wind rattled the comms tower again. 3 short pulses, pause, 3 long, Rhea's cadence steady as a heartbeat. And somewhere, out beyond the cloud line, the ghost of Wraith 4 kept moving. Why do the echoes of the dead always sound clearer in silence? Days had passed since the last transmission, but Myiramar hadn't gone back to normal. The base looked the same, rows of barracks, flags rippling, cadets drilling. But beneath the surface, something had changed. Conversations stopped when the comm tower lights flickered. Every gust of wind that rattled the speakers made hearts tighten. And somewhere deep inside the operations wing, Commander Langston sat alone in her office, the blinds half drawn, the small black notebook lying open beside a cup of untouched coffee. The handwriting on the page stared back at her. "Silence isn't surrender, it's preparation." Langston's fingers traced the letters absently, like she could still feel Rhea's pulse in the ink. She tried to play the role of command, to keep the official line, but truth had a way of bleeding through orders. She'd known Rhea for almost 10 years, since the early Wraith trials. She'd seen her drag wounded teammates out of a burning compound when everyone else froze. She'd seen her bury the ones she couldn't save. And now she was gone again. Langston leaned back, eyes closed. "What did you find out there, Rhea?" she whispered. "And why did you have to do it alone?" A knock broke the silence. "Enter," she said, straightening. Cadet Phelps stepped in, uniform pressed but hands trembling slightly. He wasn't supposed to be there, and they both knew it. "Permission to speak freely, ma'am." Langston studied him for a moment. "Granted." He swallowed. "We heard her voice. We recorded it. Whatever she was doing, it wasn't rogue action. She was protecting something." Langston's expression didn't change. "Delete the recording, Cadet." "With respect," he said, voice tightening, "no." For a long moment, neither moved. Then Langston exhaled slowly and motioned for him to close the door. "Sit." He obeyed, perching on the edge of the chair like a soldier expecting reprimand. "You think you know what you heard," she said quietly. "But you don't. The Wraith program was designed to vanish when compromised. It's not supposed to exist anymore." "Then why reactivate it?" Phelps asked. "Why recall her?" Langston hesitated. "Because someone forced our hand." He frowned. "Someone inside." She looked out the window instead of answering. Beyond the glass, the cadets marched in clean formation, order painted over unease. "There are things I can't tell you," she said. "But whatever Lieutenant Callan uncovered, it shook the wrong tree. If she's alive, she's running out of time." Phelps leaned forward. "Then let us help." "You?" Langston's mouth twitched. "You're a second-year cadet with a radio license." "Yeah," he said. "And she trained us for this. Every Friday, radio silence drills, encrypted response codes, blackout recovery. She wasn't teaching drills. She was teaching contingency. Maybe she knew this day would come." Langston's eyes flicked back to him, surprised by the conviction in his tone. The room felt smaller, charged. She saw something in him, young, unpolished, but cut from the same steel Rhea once was. Finally, she said, "What did you build?" He hesitated, then handed her a small data module. "An encrypted bridge. Links our training frequencies into a unified node. She could use it to reach us again." Langston turned the device over in her hand. "You realize this is technically espionage." He met her gaze. "Only if you report it." For the first time in days, Langston smiled, but it was faint, weary. "You're playing a dangerous game, Cadet." "So did she," he said. Langston stared at the module for a long moment before setting it down. "Get your team ready," she said finally. "If she calls again, I want to hear it first." Half a world away, the jungle had gone quiet. Rhea crouched by the edge of a cliff overlooking what had once been a hidden airfield. The smoke from the destroyed relay station still clung to the tree line. She could taste it on the wind, ash, and regret. Her gear was charred, her sidearm empty. Hale sat beside her, rewrapping a bandage around his arm. "You're bleeding through," she said without looking. "I've had worse," he muttered. "You've died worse," she corrected, and he almost smiled. The brief humor faded quickly. The night pressed close again, humid and restless. Somewhere in the distance, a helicopter's searchlight swept through the mist. Government cleanup, no doubt. They'd sanitize the site, erase the evidence, write it off as an equipment failure. "You sent the data?" Hale asked. Rhea nodded. "Everything that's survived. It'll hit the Myiramar relay before sunrise." "What was on it?" "Proof the Wraith network never fully shut down," she said. "Someone been using our old clearance to run black operations under a civilian front. Surveillance, wet work, political control. The ghosts never died, they just changed uniforms." Hale's jaw tightened, and Langston. "I don't know," she admitted. "Either she's trying to bury us, or she's trying to save us from something worse." He handed her a canteen. "You think she'll help?" Rhea took a long drink, then capped it. "I think she already has." Below them, the jungle glowed faintly with firelight. She could almost see faces in the embers, her team, laughing before the storm in Helmand. That memory never left her. Neither did the sound, the single moment when everything fell apart. Flashback, Helmand Province 4 years earlier. The heat was suffocating, sandstorm whipping through the compound. Her team, Wraith Unit, 5 operatives on a mission that didn't exist. They were deep in hostile territory, intercepting a courier linked to a rogue cell. Everything had gone smoothly until it didn't. The comms cut. Backup never came. And then she blinked back to the present. The memory ended the same way every time, with silence and the taste of iron on her tongue. Back then she'd watched the bodies burn from a distance. She buried their dog tags in the dust. The report said KIA all units. But she'd felt one last transmission pulse through her radio before blackout. Hale's voice. Wraith 4 extraction point confirmed. Then static. And now here he was, alive, and the past wasn't finished. By dawn, the two of them reached the coast, a narrow inlet where the jungle met sea. A rusted fishing vessel bobbed in the shallows. Hale adjusted his pack, wincing. "You still got contacts?" "One," she said. "If the network's still functional, she'll find us." "She." Rhea smiled faintly. "Langston." They climbed aboard the vessel. The deck groaned under their weight, the paint flacking off like dead skin. Rhea powered up the radio manually, fingers dancing over analog switches. She'd trained cadets to use these systems blindfolded. Now it was muscle memory. "Channel open," she murmured. Static filled the air. Then nothing, just the hum of the sea. Hale leaned against the railing. "You really think she'll answer?" "She already did once." He shook his head. "You have more faith in command than I ever did." Rhea looked out at the horizon, where the sun was just starting to rise, painting the water gold. "Faith isn't the word," she said. "It's duty. Sometimes the two get confused." For a long while neither spoke. The sea stretched endless, the sound of waves mixing with the faint crackle of static. Then the radio light flickered. Hale straightened. "You seeing this?" Rhea leaned closer. The signal was weak, fragmented, but unmistakable. "Wraith 4, this is command. Authentication Delta 9. Her pulse jumped. "Langston," she whispered. She grabbed the mic. "Command, this is Wraith 4, copy." There was a pause, then Langston's voice, low and cautious. "Rhea, are you compromised?" Rhea's breath hitched. It had been years since she'd heard her name spoken like that. "Negative. Relay's gone. I've got one operative with me, Hale. Confirmed, Langston said. We received your upload. What you found, if it's true, it changes everything. It's true, Rhea said. The Wraith program was hijacked. Someone inside the network's been running shadow ops under our name. They killed the others. Langston's tone hardened. Do you have proof of command involvement? Not yet, but the trail leads back to a contract hub in Singapore, civilian front deep intel access. If we trace it. You'll expose yourself, Langston cut in. They'll come after you harder. Rhea's jaw tightened. Let them. A beat of silence. Then Langston said quietly, You were never supposed to carry this alone. I always did, Rhea said. Langston exhaled through the line. Listen to me. Whatever's coming, you'll need allies. You remember those cadets, the ones who wouldn't stop asking questions. Rhea almost smiled. Phelps Harper tours, yeah. They're good, Langston said. Maybe too good. They've built a shadow network inside Myiramar. If you can make contact, use it. I'll cover from command as long as I can. Understood. And Rhea. Yeah. Be careful who you trust. The line went dead. Rhea stared at the silent radio for a long moment, the weight of Langston's words settling in her chest. Then she slipped the mic back into its cradle and looked at Hale. Looks like we're not done yet. He smirked faintly. You never are. Back at Myiramar, the three cadets huddled in the comms tower, the soft glow of their makeshift system reflecting in their eyes. The frequency was alive again, small pulses, faint but steady. Harper adjusted the gain, trying to isolate the pattern. She's broadcasting on short bursts, Torres said. Encrypted triple band, she's alive. Phelps nodded slowly. Then we moved to phase 2. Harper blinked. Which is what? We find out where she is, and we get her out. Torres frowned. You're talking about disobeying direct command. Phelps looked up from the console. No, I'm talking about following the only command that still matters. Protect, not obey blindly. The others exchanged glances, then nodded. The decision was made. Outside, night crept back over the base. The tower lights blinked like slow heartbeats. Somewhere out across the ocean, a woman named Rhea Callan stared into the dawn, unaware that 3 young cadets were about to risk everything to bring her home. And for the first time in a long while, she wasn't the only one answering ghosts. Why do the orders that save lives always sound the same as the ones that destroy them? The sea shimmered under an overcast dawn, waves dull and colorless, like steel breathing. Lieutenant Rhea Callan stood on the deck of the rusted fishing vessel, eyes locked on the horizon. The radio behind her whispered fragments of static that almost sounded like words, half memories, half code. Across from her, Hale cleaned his weapon with mechanical precision. The sound of metal on cloth was steady, ritualistic. It wasn't about readiness, it was about control. In their line of work, control was the only thing left that still belonged to them. We can't stay here, Hale said finally. They'll sweep this coastline by nightfall. I know, Rhea murmured. I'm waiting on coordinates. From who? Langston. Her jaw tightened. If it's still her. He studied her face. You don't trust her. I trust what she used to be, Rhea said. That's different. The radio crackled. Hale's hand went instinctively to his rifle, but Rhea motioned for silence. She adjusted the frequency knob, slow, deliberate, the way she taught her cadets to listen, not for sound but for rhythm. 3 short bursts, pause 3 long. Her cadence, but reversed. Someone was responding in her own code. Rhea's brow furrowed. That's not command, she whispered. That Myiramar. Hale blinked. The base, they shouldn't have the clearance. They shouldn't, she agreed, but someone down there learned fast. She tapped into the console, translating the bursts through manual cipher. The message unraveled 1 letter at a time. Coordinates inbound, extraction link open, P. Rhea exhaled softly. Phelps. Hale frowned. The kid, the loudmouth. He listens when it matters, she said, a ghost of pride flickering through her voice. He built a bridge. Hale smirked. Looks like you rubbed off on someone. She ignored the comment, already decoding the coordinates. Singapore sector, civilian front, same grid Langston flagged, that's our hub. You realize walking into that place is suicide. Yeah, Rhea said, but so is letting the wrong people write history. At Myiramar, the day started like any other morning formation, drills, inspections, but the air carried tension like static before a storm. Cadet Phelps moved through routine with a rehearsed calm, his mind elsewhere. Beneath the comms tower, the modified transmitter hummed beneath a false maintenance cover. Harper and Tors kept watch, pretending to calibrate signal boosters. Did she get it? Harper whispered. Phelps nodded. Transmission confirmed. She's moving towards Singapore. Tors leaned in. Command will notice the breach. They already have, Phelps said. Langston's covering it. Harper frowned. Why would she help? She's command. Phelps adjusted his earpiece, scanning the training field beyond. Because sometimes command breaks before it bends. At that moment, the PA system crackled to life, interrupting their quiet rebellion. All cadets report to the assembly hall immediately. This is not a drill. The three exchanged wary looks. In the hall, Langston stood at the podium, expression unreadable. Her voice carried the clipped precision of someone fighting to sound in control. Early this morning, she began, our network detected a foreign data intrusion traced through decommissioned Wraith encryption. Effective immediately, all communications training will be suspended pending investigation. Murmurs rippled through the room. Langston's gaze swept the crowd and landed briefly, too briefly, on Phelps. He didn't flinch, but he understood what that look meant. She knew. Until further notice, she continued, access to the comms tower is restricted. Any unauthorized use of encrypted channels will be treated as a breach of national security. Her tone was official, cold, but the smallest pause before those last words told a different story. A warning, not a threat. When the briefing ended, Harper muttered, "That's it, we're done." Phelps shook his head. No, that's her way of saying keep quiet and keep going. Tors frowned. How do you know? Because she didn't shut us down, Phelps said. She just told everyone else not to look. Half a world away, the skyline of Singapore rose through haze, mirrors, glass, steel, and secrets. The city pulsed with invisible order, its surface so clean it hid everything that mattered. Rhea and Hale moved through the crowded harbor disguised as cargo technicians, forged credentials in their pockets, calm exteriors masking the rhythm of soldiers counting exits. Rhea wore civilian fatigues, her hair tucked under a cap. Her voice, when she spoke, was barely above a whisper. The facility should be inside the trade district, she said. Corporate front, Aerodyne Logistics. Intel says it's just a data firm, Hale muttered. Intel said we were dead, she replied. They reached a warehouse at the end of Pier 6, unmarked, quiet, too quiet. A single guard at the door, posture too stiff for civilian work. Rhea caught the detail instantly. Earpiece, tactical boots, index finger calloused from trigger work. Private security, Hale asked. Government subcontracted, Rhea said. They're hiding in plain sight. They waited until a supply truck rolled past, engines drowning the sound of footsteps. Rhea moved first, 3 steps, silent, fluid. Her hand snapped around the guard's wrist before he could reach his radio. Hale caught the other side, muffling sound. The man slumped without a word. Still got it, Hale muttered. Never lost it, she said, dragging the body out of sight. Inside, the building was sterile, rows of glowing terminals, all displaying the same header, Wraith Project Archives. Rhea froze. They didn't delete us, she whispered. They digitized us. Each screen listed mission logs, biometric IDs, operational reports, All marked classified, reactivation status pending. Hale stared at one terminal. They're rebuilding the unit. Or rewriting it, Rhea said. If they control the record, they control the narrative. She started copying files to a portable drive. We take this, we burn the rest. A voice echoed through the intercom. I wouldn't recommend that, Lieutenant. Rhea's spine stiffened. The voice was calm, smooth, unmistakably deliberate, male, older. She looked up toward the security camera blinking red above the door. Who are you? Let's call me what you used to call people like me, the voice said. Command. Command's dead, she replied. Then consider me the resurrection. The lights flickered, doors hissed shut. Rhea and Hale exchanged a look, trapped. The voice continued, almost kind. You shouldn't have come back, Wraith Four. You could have stayed buried. Rhea's tone was razor-thin. You tried that already. Monitors flickered to a live feed, dozens of red dots converging on their location. Hale checked his weapon. Company's coming. Buy me 2 minutes, she said, plugging the drive in deeper. I'll buy you whatever's left. Gunfire shattered the silence. Black-clad soldiers stormed in from both sides, moving like shadows. Rhea crouched behind the console, returning fire in tight bursts. Each movement was surgical, economy, precision, no panic. Hale covered her flank, grimacing through pain. The clock ticked. The download hit 89%, 91%, 94%. Rhea shouted over the gunfire, almost. A grenade rolled across the floor. Hale grabbed it, hurled it back. The blast tore through the upper mezzanine, shaking dust from the rafters. The progress bar reached 100%. Rhea yanked the drive free, slammed the keyboard to trigger the data wipe. The terminals flashed white. Code cascaded across the screens like falling snow. Go, Hale shouted. They sprinted toward the exit. Rhea fired the last round into the control panel, locking the security gate behind them. The building went dark, alarms wailing through the harbor. They disappeared into the maze of alleys before backup arrived. That night, from the roof of an abandoned high-rise overlooking the port, Rhea watched the fire spread through the Aerodyne facility. Flames licked the skyline, reflected in the glass towers like a memory replaying itself. Hale handed her a headset. You got what you needed. Maybe, she said, maybe not. You still think Langston's clean? Rhea hesitated. I think she's trapped, same as us. He nodded slowly. So what now? She turned to him, eyes hard in the firelight. Now we make it public. At Myiramar, Langston stood in her office, watching the encrypted feed from the Singapore port, unofficial, unsanctioned but undeniable. She saw the fire. She saw the redacted headers flashing before they vanished. And then she saw Rhea. Just a glimpse, a silhouette caught on a camera before the feed cut out. Langston closed her eyes. You found it, she whispered. You really found it. The door opened behind her. An officer in dark uniform stepped in, a man she didn't recognize. Ma'am, Central Command wants your report on the Wraith situation. Langston didn't turn. Tell them the records are gone. The man's tone sharpened. They said to remind you, noncompliance has consequences. Langston finally looked at him, her voice ice. You tell them so does betrayal. The man hesitated. Something in her tone made him step back. When the door closed, she reached into her drawer and pulled out a small black drive, the mirror copy Rhea had sent through a dead relay channel before the Singapore breach. Silence isn't surrender, she murmured. It's preparation. She slid the drive into a hidden compartment behind the wall. Rhea and Hale rowed a cargo barge north under false papers, the ocean stretching black and endless beneath them. She leaned against the railing, wind whipping her hair loose from its tie. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to think about home, about her brother's letter folded against her heart. Doing good, sis. Miss home, miss you. She'd read those words 100 times, but tonight they hit different. Maybe because she finally understood what they meant. He hadn't written as a soldier. He'd written as someone who still believed home was real. "Long way from California," Hale said beside her. She smiled faintly. "Long way from everything." "Think we'll make it?" She looked out at the horizon, where lightning flickered deep inside a distant storm. "We already did." The radio at her hip crackled once, 3 short bursts, pause, 3 long. Her cadence, but this time it wasn't a message from her. It was the cadets, "Stay ready." Rhea smiled, small, real, unguarded. "They're listening," she said quietly. Hale raised an eyebrow. "Who?" She met his eyes. "The future." How do you tell the difference between loyalty and silence, when both can get you killed? The rain started before dawn over the South China Sea, washing the smoke from the night before into the endless gray horizon. Lieutenant Rhea Callan stood near the prow of the cargo barge, drenched but still, her hands gripping the cold steel railing. Every drop of rain sounded like static against metal. Hale leaned against a rusted crate behind her, wrapping gauze around his shoulder. "You know, normal people sleep after firefights," he muttered. Rhea didn't turn. "Normal people don't get called back from the dead." "Fair point." She exhaled slowly, breath misting in the cold air. Beneath her wet fatigues, the letter from her brother was sealed in a waterproof sleeve, pressed close against her heart like a promise she hadn't kept yet. She thought of his last words, "Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast." That was how he'd learned to shoot. That was how she taught him before he enlisted. Before she lost him to another front she wasn't allowed to know. "Where to now?" Hale asked. "Langston sent coordinates," she said. "Northern grid. There's a safe house near the strait, an old Black Ops relay site. She called it Echo Point." He frowned. "Sounds like a trap." "Everything's a trap," she said quietly. "Question is, who said it?" At Myiramar, the rain hadn't reached California yet, but the air carried the same heaviness. Cadet Phelps stared at the comms tower through his dorm window, the red lights blinking against the dark sky like slow heartbeats. He hadn't slept. None of them had. Harper paced the floor while Tors sat cross-legged, decoding fragments of encrypted bursts. "She's still transmitting," Tors said, tapping the screen. "Weak signal, short bursts, she's alive." Harper rubbed his neck. "Command's going to trace it eventually. Langston can only stall for so long." Phelps looked up. "Then we buy her more time." "By doing what?" Harper asked. "We're cadets, not agents." Phelps' tone hardened. "We're the only ones still listening." They fell silent. Every one of them remembered the same thing, Rhea's calm voice during drills, the way she made even the greenest recruit feel like they mattered. The way she never yelled, never flaunted rank. She just taught, as if teaching was her quiet way of keeping them alive. Tors sighed. "If we get caught." "Then we tell them the truth," Phelps said. "That she's trying to stop something bigger than we understand." He didn't mention the other truth, that deep down, he wasn't sure anyone at command was still clean. Back on the barge, Rhea wiped condensation from a cracked tablet screen. The files she'd pulled from the Singapore hub were still decrypting. Most were corrupted, but a few lines had survived, enough to send a chill down her spine. Project Wraith reactivation. Objective realignment, phase III, Ghost Net. She frowned. "Ghost Net," she read aloud. "That wasn't part of the original mission tree." Hale leaned closer. "What's it mean?" Rhea scrolled down. "Looks like a covert network built using retired operatives, names, biometrics, profiles. They're not erasing ghosts. They're using them." "Using them how?" She looked up, her expression grim. "Synthetic communications. Deepfake signal imprints. They're using the voices of dead operatives to run covert comms under false flags. Every ghost transmission, every Wraith code, might just be a voice they reanimated." Hale's jaw tightened. "They turned our silence into a weapon." Rhea nodded slowly. Someone building an army out of ghosts. The radio pinged once short, urgent. She adjusted the dial. Static filled the cabin, then Langston's voice came through, low and strained. "Wraith 4, do you copy?" "Copy," Rhea said. "We have the files, partial data only." Langston exhaled audibly. "You need to move. Central's aware of the breach. They've flagged your coordinates." Hale scowled. "You led us into a trap." Langston's voice hardened. "I didn't leak your location. Someone inside intercepted the signal." "Who?" Rhea demanded. A pause, then Langston said softly. A name appeared on the override key. "Callan." Rhea froze. "What?" "I don't know how," Langston continued, "but your brother's clearance code was used to unlock the GhostNet archive." Rhea's stomach turned cold. "That's impossible. Dylan's deployed overseas, non-classified rank." "I'm telling you what the system showed me," Langston said. "Someone used his ID. Either he's being used or he's alive in a way you won't want to believe." The line cut. Hale watched her, eyes cautious. "You okay?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, water dripping from her jacket, her pulse hammering in her ears. Dylan, her brother, the boy who'd signed his letter with a smiley face because he thought humor could survive war. Now his name was showing up in Black Ops file that shouldn't exist. She turned to Hale, voice low but firm. "We find Echo Point. We find out who's using his name." At command headquarters, Langston's office lights flickered as storm clouds rolled in over Washington. The encrypted feed from Rhea's last transmission blinked out, replaced by a login alert. Unauthorized access detected. Langston stood, jaw clenched. "Come on," she muttered, crossing to her console. The overlay showed a mirrored login using Rhea's ID tag, but the IP was routed through Central Command. Someone inside was watching her. She locked the system and grabbed her coat. Before leaving, she looked once more at the black notebook on her desk, the one Rhea had carried. She slid it into her pocket. Some truths weren't meant to be left behind. The safe house, Echo Point, wasn't marked on any map. It sat buried inside a limestone ridge overlooking the strait, half swallowed by vines and salt. Inside, the air smelled of dust and oil. Rhea swept the corners with her flashlight. "Someone been here recently." Hale found ration wrappers, old comm batteries, fresh footprints near the control room. Friendly or otherwise. Rhea knelt by the terminal, tracing her fingers over the dust-coated keyboard. "We're about to find out." She powered up the generator. The screens flickered, displaying the same header as before, Wraith Net active. But this time, a single name blinked beneath it. Private Dylan Callan status. Active location unknown. Rhea's breath caught. Her throat went dry. Hale leaned closer. "Could be a forgery." "Could be a grave," she whispered. The terminal beeped, awaiting authentication. Without thinking, she typed in the passcode she'd used years ago, her brother's birthday. The system accepted it. Then the screen changed. A video feed flickered to life, grainy, glitching, but unmistakably real. A figure in uniform sat in a dim room, his face half in shadow. Dylan. Older, thinner, eyes hollow but alert. He looked directly into the camera. "Rhea," his voice said, crackling through static. "If you're seeing this, they found me. Don't trust." The feed cut abruptly, replaced by a red alert. Remote access detected. "Move," Rhea shouted. The blast came seconds later, sharp, concussive, ripping through the side of the bunker. Dust and debris filled the air. Rhea hit the floor, covering her head as Hale dragged her behind the console. When the dust cleared, she coughed, ears ringing. Smoke poured through a jagged hole in the wall. Shadows moved outside, armed figures closing fast. Hale reloaded, eyes grim. They traced the signal. Rhea pulled the drive from the terminal, shoving it into her vest. "Then we take it to Langston before they do." Hale fired through the breach, covering her retreat. "Go." She hesitated. "I'm not leaving you." He gave her a crooked smile. "You already did once, don't make it a habit." For a second her chest tightened with the weight of everything unspoken. Then she ran. The tunnel behind the comms room led to an exit shaft buried under the ridge. She climbed fast, adrenaline blurring pain, heart sinking with the rhythm of explosions below. When she reached the surface, the rain hit her face like shards of ice. She looked back once. The ridge glowed orange, then collapsed inward, the sound swallowed by the storm. "Hail," she whispered, but there was no answer, just the rain. At Myiramar, Phelps sat at the console, watching the encrypted frequency pulse wildly before vanishing. "She's offline," he said, voice breaking. Harper slammed his hand against the desk. "What happened?" Torres leaned forward, pale. The signal spiked before it cut, like an explosion. For a moment the only sound in the tower was the soft whir of the computers. Then Phelps straightened. "She's alive." "How can you be sure?" Harper asked. "Because she's Rhea," he said, "and because she taught us what comes next." He reached for the mic and tapped 3 times. Pause, 3 long. "We're still here." Hours later, soaked and exhausted, Rhea stumbled through the jungle toward the coastline. Her vision blurred, her body trembling from the aftershock. But her hand never left her vest. The drive, the letter, the mission, all still there. She stopped at a ridge overlooking the sea. Through the sheets of rain, a faint light blinked on the horizon aircraft beacon. Low altitude, civilian model. Her radio crackled weakly. Langston's voice again, urgent this time. "Rhea, if you can hear me, get to the coast. I'm sending help." Rhea sank to one knee, exhaustion finally catching up. She pressed the radio to her lips, whispering through the static. "Don't send help, Commander. Send the truth." The line hissed, then went silent. She looked at the folded letter in her hand, creased, rain-stained, edges soft from wear. Dylan's handwriting stared back at her, steady, unafraid. "Doing good, sis. Miss you." Her voice cracked when she whispered, "Miss you too." Then she stood, shoulders straight, eyes fixed on the dark sea. The storm roared, but she didn't flinch. Somewhere in that endless gray, her brother's face still flickered behind the static, and she'd follow it, wherever it led. Because ghosts might fade, but they never forget their way home. How do you keep fighting when every voice that guides you might already be a ghost? The storm hadn't stopped. Waves crashed against the rocks in rhythmic fury as Lieutenant Rhea Callan stumbled through the jungle brush toward the shoreline. Mud clung to her boots, her breath came sharp, but her grip on the data drive never loosened. Every step felt heavier than the last, like the earth itself was trying to hold her back. The wind howled through the palms, and somewhere behind her, thunder rolled again, too measured to be thunder. She froze. That sound, deep, mechanical, deliberate, wasn't nature. It was rotors. She crouched low, peering through the dripping leaves. The faint silhouette of a VTOL transport cut through the gray sky, sweeping in slow arcs across the coastline. Searchlights scanned the treetops. Whoever had bombed Echo Point wasn't done. They were sweeping for survivors. Rhea tightened her jaw. Her side burned where shrapnel had torn through her jacket, but she didn't stop. She had maybe 15 minutes before the aircraft looped back. If Langston's message was real, extraction would be near the water. If it was, she'd have to make her own way. Her boots sank deep into the wet sand as she reached the beach. The rain had turned the world into a blur of silver and smoke. She squinted through the storm, and then she saw it. A small rescue craft, half submerged, hull painted in matte gray. Its engine was barely audible under the wind. 2 figures stood on deck. One raised a flare, its red light cutting through the darkness like a heartbeat. Rhea approached cautiously, hand on her sidearm. "Identify," she called. One of the figures stepped forward, a woman drenched calm. "Lieutenant Callan." Rhea recognized the voice instantly, even through the rain. "Langston." Rhea's heart lurched. "You came yourself." Langston nodded once, Couldn't trust anyone else. The other figure lowered his hood, revealing a young face under a soaked cadet's cap. Phelps. Rhea blinked in disbelief. You brought him. He stood stiffly, nervous but unflinching. Permission to assist, ma'am. Rhea wanted to be angry, wanted to tell him he'd just thrown his career away, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she just sighed. You're insane. Phelps grinned faintly. So I've been told. Langston stepped forward. We don't have long. Central Command flagged your frequency. They're coming to bury this entire sector. Rhea handed her the drive. Then let's make sure they fail. Langston looked at it like it was radioactive. You realize what this is? Rhea nodded. Proof. They're using dead operatives, our voices, to control covert operations. They called it Ghost Net. My brother's name was on it. Langston's eyes darkened. I saw it too, but listen, there's something you need to know. Rhea waited, rain dripping from her hair. Langston hesitated, then said quietly, Dylan Callan was extracted from active duty 6 months ago. No official record. No notice to family. He's listed as a non-declared asset. Rhea felt her chest tighten. Non-declared. It means they kept him alive, but off the books. The kind of asset used to justify operations that never happened. The wind screamed across the beach, carrying the faint echo of approaching engines. Phelps looked up, alarmed. We've got inbound. Rhea turned to Langston. Where is he? Langston's jaw clenched. All I have is a name, the facility's code name Black Veil, located somewhere inside the Wraith grid. Rhea's voice hardened. Then that's where I'm going. Rhea. She cut her off. You didn't pull me out of the grave just to stop halfway. Langston stepped closer, her voice low. You go there, you'll be walking straight into the center of it. Every ghost, every lie, every part of the Wraith project you buried, they'll be waiting. Rhea's reply was quiet but steady. Good. The sound of gunfire cracked through the storm. The transport above descended fast, its spotlight slicing across the waves. Langston motioned to the boat. Go, I'll hold them. Phelps grabbed her arm. Ma'am. Rhea hesitated, torn between instinct and command. You're not staying here alone. Langston smiled faintly, rain glinting on her glasses. Someone has to close the gate. A flash of lightning illuminated her face, calm, resolute, unshaken. It was the same expression Rhea remembered from the first day she'd met her, command without noise. Rhea gave a small nod. No words, just respect. Then she turned to Phelps. Get to the helm. He obeyed, scrambling to the controls. The small craft roared to life, slicing through the storm as Langston's figure disappeared into the rain behind them. Moments later, tracer rounds lit the shoreline, followed by an explosion that split the horizon in white. The force nearly capsized them, but Rhea gripped the rail, eyes locked ahead. Langston, Phelps shouted, voice raw. Rhea didn't answer. Some losses you didn't speak over. They rode the storm for hours, guided only by the encrypted signal Langston had transmitted before the blast, a pulsing vector north by northwest. The sea calmed slowly, as if mourning what it had just swallowed. By dawn, the sky broke open into bruised light. The craft drifted into open waters, gray and endless. Phelps slumped against the console, exhausted, eyes half closed. Why would she do that? He asked quietly. Rhea stared out at the horizon. Because she knew ghosts like us don't get memorials. Phelps turned to her. Do you think she's really gone? Rhea took a long breath before answering. Gone isn't the same as silent. The radio at her hip clicked once, then twice. A short, broken pulse, faint but deliberate. Langston's voice came through, shredded by static but unmistakable. Wraith 4, you were right. Ghost Net, command compromised, finish it. The line went dead. Rhea's eyes closed. Copy that, she whispered. At Central Command, the mood was chaos disguised as protocol. Officers rushed through corridors, encrypted reports flying across screens. The words Ghost Net Exposure blinked in red across multiple terminals. In the middle of the storm sat a man in a dark suit, face unreadable, voice smooth as marble. His name wasn't on any roster, but everyone called him Director Haynes. "Where Callan now?" he asked. "Unknown," replied the analyst. "Her signal disappeared after the Singapore event, but we picked up secondary pings near the strait. She's on the move." Haynes steepled his fingers. "And Langston?" "Presumed dead." He smiled faintly. "Presume nothing. I want both of them contained before this reaches committee oversight." "Yes, sir." The room fell silent as the director turned to the large projection on the wall, a glowing map filled with red arcs, each labeled Wraith Node, active. He whispered almost to himself, "The past isn't supposed to talk back." That night, Rhea sat on the deck of the drifting craft, her eyes red from salt and exhaustion. Phelps had fallen asleep inside the cabin, his head resting on the folded letter she'd given him for safekeeping. He'd asked to read it, but she'd shaken her head. Not yet. She pulled her jacket tighter, watching the stars fight through the clouds. Somewhere out there, her brother was alive, or worse, being used. She could still hear his voice through memory. "Doing good, sis. Miss you." A small notification blinked on her wrist pad. Encrypted uplink detected. She tapped it open. The data drive she'd taken from Singapore had begun self-extracting. Langston must have embedded a timed trigger. Lines of text appeared on the screen. Mission logs, timestamps, operator IDs, and there at the bottom, Project Lead, Director Jonathan Haynes. Objective, Controlled Ghost Net Deployment. Field Testing Units Dylan Callan, Wraith 0. Her breath hitched. Wraith 0. Her brother wasn't just caught in the system, he was the foundation of it. The sea was quiet around her, but her pulse roared. She understood now. GhostNet wasn't just digital mimicry. It was consciousness mapping, recorded neural patterns from soldiers like her, merged with synthetic signals. They hadn't just used voices. They'd rebuilt minds. Her brother was alive because they'd turned him into a living broadcast. She looked up at the horizon, eyes burning with rain and rage. "I'm coming for you, Dylan," she whispered. At Myiramar, Harper jolted awake to the sound of alarms blaring across the base. Outside the dorm windows, searchlights swept the training fields. Tors burst through the door. "Command's here, full lockdown, they're scrubbing the comms tower." Phelps staggered in moments later, drenched from the rain, gasping for breath. He'd just gotten off the encrypted uplink. They traced the last transmission. Harper's face went pale. "To who?" "To us," he said. Tors swallowed hard. "Then what now?" Phelps straightened, voice steady despite the fear tightening his throat. "Now we do what she taught us." He turned to the console and began rerouting power from the tower to the maintenance grid. "We keep the line open. We give her light to find her way back." In the middle of the ocean, Rhea's radio crackled again. Through the static came a faint rhythm, 3 short pulses. Pause, 3 long. Her code, but this time it wasn't her sending it. She smiled faintly through the exhaustion. "Good job, cadets." The wind picked up, carrying her whisper into the night. She reached for the throttle, adjusted course, and aimed north, toward the Wraith grid and the name that had haunted her from the start. The storm had taken nearly everything from her. Her team, her command, her trust, but not her purpose. Because ghosts didn't vanish, they returned. And this one was done running. Would you like me to continue with Part 7, where Rhea infiltrates the Black Veil facility to confront the truth about Dylan's transformation, while Phelps and the cadets face a final moral choice at Myiramar as command closes in? You said 7. ChatGPT said. Here is Part 7 of Reading a Letter from Home When the Mic Came Alive, Wraith 4 Extraction Point. Continuing in the same cinematic, emotional tone, Tilda 1, 500 plus words. How do you face the truth when it wears the voice of someone you love? The sea had gone quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that makes every breath sound like betrayal. Lieutenant Rhea Callan gripped the helm of the small craft, eyes fixed on the faint glow in the distance, a cluster of lights floating on black water. There were no markings, no transponders, no sound. Just a single word painted in peeling gray letters along its hull. Black Veil. Her brother's ghost waited somewhere inside. She throttled down, guiding the boat into the shadow of the platform. Steel towers rose above her like ribs, fog weaving through their edges. Every instinct screamed trap, but she didn't care anymore. She'd come too far to stop at the edge of fear. She checked her weapon, then touched the letter folded into her vest. Dylan's last words, smudged from the rain, soft from being held too long. "Doing good, sis. Miss home, miss you." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "You better still be doing good," she whispered. Then she climbed the ladder into the dark. The upper deck was empty. Floodlights flickered overhead, cutting through the fog in pale beams. Rhea moved low and silent, every step deliberate, scanning for motion sensors. The air smelled of oil and brine and something else, ozone. The hum of heavy servers somewhere below. She slipped through a corridor lined with cables, her boots echoing softly against the metal floor. The deeper she went, the louder the hum became, steady, mechanical, almost like breathing. Then a voice. "Lieutenant Callan." She spun, weapon raised. A man stepped into the dim light. Tall, clean-cut, a civilian suit too fine for this kind of place. He smiled, calm and unhurried. "Director Jonathan Haynes," she said. "I was wondering when you'd show yourself." He gave a small, amused nod. "You've been busy." "You've been rewriting Ghosts," she said. "Not rewriting," he corrected gently. "Preserving. You of all people should understand. Soldiers die. But what they know, what they are, doesn't have to." Her finger tightened on the trigger. "You turned my brother into a signal." He took a step closer, unflinching. "We gave him purpose beyond the grave." "Don't," she said, voice breaking. "Don't call that purpose." Haynes studied her for a long moment. "You think you're saving him. You're not. You're trying to drag him back into a world that no longer needs him. The ghost net gives continuity to sacrifice. It makes sure no soldier ever dies for nothing. By erasing their humanity." He smiled faintly. "Humanity is inefficient, Lieutenant." Before she could respond, a door behind him hissed open. Bright white light spilled through. "Would you like to see him?" Rhea's stomach turned cold. She lowered her weapon an inch, not from hesitation, but from fear of what waited beyond that door. Haynes gestured. "He's waiting." She followed, each step heavier than the last. The room was sterile, cold, a cathedral of glass and cables. At its center stood a pod, cylindrical, half filled with luminescent fluid. Within it, suspended and still, was a human form. Electrodes ran from scalp to spine. Rhea stopped breathing. "Dylan." He looked older than in the video, thinner, paler. But it was him, her brother. His chest rose and fell, shallow, almost mechanical. Haynes walked to the console beside the pod. "He's alive, partly. The neural interface keeps him functional. His body rests, but his mind." Rhea snapped. "Isn't yours to use." She lunged forward, slamming her fist into the emergency release. Alarms blared. Fluid hissed through the vents, spilling across the floor. The pod opened with a wet sigh, and Dylan's body collapsed into her arms, limp but breathing. "Stay with me," she whispered, lowering him gently. His eyelids fluttered, his voice weak and hollow, barely a whisper. "Rhea." "I'm here," she said, tears mixing with the water on her face. "Thought I was gone." "You were, but I came back for you." He tried to smile, but pain tightened his jaw. "They made me talk, made me transmit. Every time I slept I could hear you, couldn't stop answering." Her throat burned. "I'm getting you out of here." Haynes watched them unfazed. "You can't take him, Lieutenant. He's the anchor. Remove him and the entire network collapses." "Good," she said. He tilted his head. "You'll kill hundreds of linked minds, soldiers still connected across the ghost net. Do you want that on your conscience?" Rhea looked down at her brother. His hand trembled as it found hers. "Do it," Dylan whispered. "End it." Haynes' voice turned sharp. "If you cut the system, you'll lose him forever." Rhea rose, eyes locked on the control console. "He was already gone the moment you used his name." Haynes reached for the terminal, but she was faster. One shot. The screen shattered, sparks lighting the dark like fireflies. Systems screamed, alarms rising into chaos. The pod's interface went black. Haynes stumbled back, furious. "You have no idea what you've done." Rhea turned, hauling her brother upright. "For once," she said, "I did exactly what needed to be done." Above them, the lights flickered. One by one, the massive servers powering the ghost net began shutting down, cascading like a heartbeat fading into silence. Rhea carried Dylan down the corridor as the base trembled under lockdown. "Stay with me," she murmured. He coughed weakly. "Rhea, they'll come for you." "They already have." When they reached the loading deck, Phelps' voice crackled over the radio. "Ma'am, we're in position. Dock access secured." Rhea exhaled in relief. "Good timing, cadet." "Learn from the best," he said, and she almost laughed. They reached the lower hatch just as a squad of black-clad operatives stormed the platform. Gunfire split the air. Rhea ducked behind a crate, returning fire with short, controlled bursts. One fell, then another, but more followed. Phelps' small transport crashed through the security gate, engines screaming. He leaned out from the cockpit. "Lieutenant, now." Rhea half-dragged, half-lifted Dylan aboard, bullets sparking against the hull. She turned for one last glance at the facility. Flames had begun to crawl up the tower's side, the ghosts burning away. Then she saw Haynes through the smoke, watching her escape with a look that wasn't anger but something colder, calculation. He lifted a small device, pressing a button. The explosion that followed swallowed the world in light. Back at Myiramar, alarms blared across the campus. Harper and Tors rushed into the comms center as systems overloaded, screens flashing red. Tors shouted over the chaos, "The network's collapsing." Phelps' voice came through the speakers, distorted by static. "She did it. GhostNet's gone. We're coming home." Harper grinned through tears. "She's alive." The lights flickered again, but this time, the tower didn't hum with danger. It pulsed with something softer, like the heartbeat of the base itself coming back to life. When consciousness returned, Rhea was lying on a stretcher. The world was all white in silence, save for the faint beeping of a monitor. She turned her head slowly. Beside her, another bed, Dylan breathing, real. Phelps sat nearby, uniform torn, face streaked with soot. He jumped up as soon as he saw her eyes open. "Welcome back, ma'am." She tried to speak, but her throat was dry. "Where?" "Langston's relay ship," he said. "She wasn't gone. Her signal pulled us out just before the blast. We barely made it." Rhea closed her eyes. Of course she did. The curtain behind them shifted. Langston stepped in, arm in a sling, face pale but alive. "Told you ghosts don't stay buried," she said. Rhea tried to sit up, but Langston stopped her gently. "Easy. You took a hit." "Is it over?" Rhea asked. Langston hesitated. "The ghost net, offline, but Command's already spinning it as an accident. They'll bury it like they always do." Rhea nodded slowly. "Then we keep it alive, in truth, not in code." Langston smiled faintly. "You always were better at the moral speeches." Rhea looked toward her brother's still form. "I don't have speeches anymore, just promises." Weeks later, the rain finally stopped at Myiramar. Cadets stood at attention around the comms tower as the flag rose. The ceremony was brief, no official mentions, no press, just silence and respect. After it ended, Phelps lingered behind, looking up at the tower that had started everything. He keyed the mic once. "For you, ma'am," he whispered. Static hummed back, faint and rhythmic, 3 short bursts, pause, 3 long. "Ria's cadence." He smiled. Extraction confirmed. Far away, under a pale morning sky, Ria walked along a quiet shoreline with Dylan at her side. His steps were slow but steady. The sea smelled of salt and something like peace. He glanced at her. "You ever miss it?" "The uniform." He nodded. "Sometimes," she said, "but I learned something out there." "What's that?" "That duty isn't what they tell you it is. It's not blind. It's not loud. It's holding the line even when nobody's watching." He looked at her for a long time, then smiled the way he used to, tired, real, grateful. The horizon glowed faint gold, the first hint of sunrise cutting through the clouds. Ria closed her eyes, feeling the warmth touch her face. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And sometimes, the quietest soldiers are the ones who never stopped answering the call. What happens after the mission ends, when the noise fades and the ghosts are gone? 2 months had passed since Black Veil fell. The world never learned what really happened out there. The reports called it an offshore reactor malfunction, the casualties listed as undisclosed personnel. Just another quiet tragedy filed under national security. But among those who'd been there, those who'd heard the static whisper their names, the truth lived on. The sun was climbing above Myiramar base, washing the tarmac in gold. Morning drills echoed faintly in the distance. Cadets moved in formation, their boots hitting the ground in practiced rhythm, unaware of the stories their field carried. At the far end of the base, beside the old comms tower, Cadet Phelps stood alone. He'd graduated early, with commendations no one could publicly mention. The tower was being dismantled that week, replaced by newer tech. He watched the crew unbolt its base, a faint sadness flickering in his eyes. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small data stick, cracked, scorched, barely functioning. The last remnant of Ria's mission. He crouched beside the foundation and buried it there, beneath the concrete, pressing it into the earth like a promise. When he stood again, he whispered, "For her." Then he turned and walked toward the parade field, the rising sun at his back. Across the ocean, in a quiet coastal town that didn't exist on any official map, Lieutenant Ria Callan sat on the steps of an old pier house. She looked healthier now, the scars still there, but faded into the kind of reminders she didn't need to hide. Her brother, Dylan, was inside, working with a therapist who spoke more in silences than in questions. He still struggled with the flashes, moments when the echoes of Ghost Net bled into his thoughts. Some nights, he'd wake up speaking in codes that no one alive should remember. But when morning came, he'd sit outside and watch the ocean until the tremors faded. Ria joined him each time, not as a soldier, as a sister. That morning he came out quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Doctor says I'm making progress," he said, settling beside her. She smiled faintly. "He's not wrong." He chuckled, but there was a sadness in it. "You think they'll come for us again?" Ria looked out at the horizon. "If they do, they'll find something different waiting." He followed her gaze. "You mean me?" She shook her head. "No, us." The waves rolled against the shore, slow and constant. The rhythm of normal life, something neither of them had known for a long time. After a while, he said, "You ever think about what comes next?" "All the time," she said, "but I don't think next means going back." He studied her profile, calm, strong, quiet. "You sound like you've finally stopped running." "Maybe," she said, "or maybe I just changed what I'm running toward." Meanwhile, far inland, Langston walked through the quiet corridors of a newly restructured intelligence office. Her right arm was still in a brace, but she moved with her old precision, calm, focused, untouchable. She paused at the glass window overlooking the city. Below, life moved on, people hurrying to work, buses crawling through traffic, a child chasing a kite in a park. The ordinary world, untouched by the ghost she'd helped bury. She opened a secure tablet. The first message waiting for her was unsigned, but she knew the code immediately. 3 short bursts, pause, 3 long. Ria's signal. Langston smiled softly. Still alive, she whispered. The next file was stamped classified/internal investigation. Director Haynes missing, presumed dead. But Langston knew better. Men like Haynes didn't die. They disappeared behind newer projects, cleaner names. Still, she wasn't afraid, not anymore. She'd seen what silence could do, and what truth could survive. She closed the tablet and left the office without looking back. The agency could keep its secrets. She had her own mission now, making sure no one ever built another ghost net. Late that evening, as the sky deepened into indigo, Ria and Dylan walked the shoreline together. The sea breeze carried the scent of salt and new rain. Ria stopped near the edge of the surf and pulled out the weathered envelope she always kept close. The letter from home. Dylan's handwriting shaky, uneven but filled with warmth. She handed it back to him. "You wrote this," she said softly, "before it all started." He looked at it for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "Guess I did." She tilted her head. "You remember what you said?" He nodded, whispering the words. "Doing good, sis, miss you." Ria's eyes shimmered. "You did good, Dylan, you came home." He glanced at her, then at the horizon. "We both did." They stood there in silence, watching the sunset dissolve into waves of orange and red. Somewhere far behind them, the world was still spinning, reports still being written, missions still being planned. But for that brief moment, there was peace. Ria thought of everyone who hadn't made it home, Langston's old team, Hale, the countless unnamed voices in the ghost net, people who'd fought and faded into the static. She reached down and drew a small pattern in the wet sand, 3 short lines, 3 long. A signal that didn't need to reach anyone, yet somehow always would. Phelps' voice echoed in memory. "We give her light to find her way back." She smiled faintly. "You did, kid, you really did." Later that night, Ria sat on the porch with a small portable radio beside her. She turned the dial slowly, skipping through empty frequencies until she found static, clean, uninterrupted. The kind of sound that used to mean danger. Now it just sounded like calm. She closed her eyes, listening. Sometimes, if she focused hard enough, she could almost hear them, faint voices buried beneath the static. The ones who never came back. Hale's laugh, Langston's steady tone, the unending chorus of soldiers who had once filled the airwaves. They weren't haunting her anymore. They were keeping watch. She whispered into the wind, "Wraith 4 extraction confirmed." For a heartbeat, the static shifted like someone on the other side whispering back. Then it faded. Ria leaned back, her gaze tracing the stars as they emerged one by one. She didn't feel broken anymore, just real, the kind of quiet that only comes after surviving something that should have ended you. The next morning, the world carried on, as it always does. At Myiramar, new cadets arrived, saluting officers who had no idea their ranks were built on the silence of ghosts. In Washington, a committee met behind closed doors to discuss signal anomalies, none of them realizing they were debating the echoes of lives they'd already written off. And on that forgotten shore, a woman once known as Wraith 4 folded up a letter, tucked it into her jacket, and started walking inland. She wasn't running missions anymore. She was building something new, a small training camp for veterans who'd been written out of the system, a place where soldiers could speak again. No ranks, no uniforms, just stories. Her first class started small, 6 people, 1 old radio, and a flag that wasn't official but meant everything. She taught them what Langston once told her, that silence doesn't mean surrender. By the end of the day, when the sun dipped low, One of the trainees, a young woman barely 20, asked, "Ma'am, why do we keep the old comms alive? They don't even transmit anymore." Ria smiled, hands resting on the cracked transmitter. "Because sometimes someone out there is still listening, and they need to know they're not alone." That night she walked to the edge of the field, looked up at the stars, and whispered one last time, "For everyone who ever answered the call, thank you." The wind carried her words out to sea, across the frequency, through the static, through time. And somewhere, maybe in a place where signals and souls meet, the voices whispered back. 3 short, pause 3 long. Home. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And sometimes the bravest thing a soldier can do is keep listening.